And Chair, you're now live.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wade Mason. I'm a councillor for District 7. I'm neither the chair nor vice chair of this committee, but as both the chair and vice chair are unable to attend the record today, I'm going to start by asking, is there any other member for the onerous duty of being chair, acting chair today? Going once, going twice, we'll consider me confirmed just for today to run the meeting. Thank you for that. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's 4:32 on January 11th. I want to start by acknowledging that Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. And I think that's particularly important to recognize, given the historic importance of the Northwest Arm Park to the Mi'kmaq people who lived here prior to colonization. So as is standard for the virtual meetings, we'll start with a roll call, and I see two people have joined us. If the members of the committee can turn their cameras on, that'd be great. I'm going to start at the top. We've got Sandra Nolan, sends regrets, as does Chair Carolyn O'Hanley. So going through the list, I see Ted Doan. Ted, could you give us a mic check and the camera check?
I'm here. This is my mic
Great,
check.
thank you.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. We can all hear you. Ryan, can you do the same?
Yep. Ryan Frizzell. Can everyone hear me? Perfect.
Dominique Johns, can you turn your camera on and we'll do a mic check?
I'm here.
Great, thank you so much. And who else do we have who's on the list there? Karen, can you turn your mic on and say hello?
Hi, I'm here. If you can hear me.
We can.
Okay, perfect.
So perfect. And Mia is not here either. So unless she's logged in under a different name. Nope, moving on. All right, thank you, everyone. We will move on to our agenda for today's meeting. Now, to the committee, the first thing on the agenda that was circulated is the annual election of the chair. But I suspect that though we don't have it in writing, that current chair and vice chair would be interested in reoffering, and they were both unable to be here today. So in the interest of having a more full house, I would entertain a motion from a member of the committee to defer the annual election of chair and vice chair to the next meeting of the committee. If someone would like to make that.
Yeah, this is Ted. So moved.
Ted has moved the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Very good. Is there any, and I would ask the members of the committee if they could keep their cameras on. I know that sounds silly, but that's actually a legislative requirement from the province when you're doing virtual meetings, is that we have to keep our cameras on. Obviously, if you have to, step out for a second or whatever, you can turn it. So we have a motion that's been moved by Ted and seconded by Ryan around whether or not around deferring the election of chair and vice chair to the next meeting. Is there any discussion? Does anybody have any add or repeat today?
Oh, excuse me, acting chair. I just wanted to add that we're going to need separate motions for deferral of vice chair and chair. Two separate motions.
Okay, so all right, so we'll consider it then as given that Ted and Ryan move to delay chair, and then I'll solicit after we're done with this for vice chair. So, and I've got, if you want to speak, please use the raise your hand function, and I'll keep an eye on that. But because I'm on my laptop, I can't see the raise your hand function in chat. So please use the raise your hand function, or just speak out. So there's nobody on the list to speak to this today. So therefore, we'll move to the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Seeing none, we'll consider that deferred. So now we'll need a separate motion to defer the election of the vice chair of the committee to the next meeting. Would someone care to make that motion?
I'll bring that motion forward.
Ryan has proposed the motion. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that. It's Ted.
Thank you, Ted. So that's moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much for that. So moving down through the annotated agenda. So we've done the land acknowledgements. We've done the annual election of chair and vice chair. And now we're on to approval of the minutes of November. Oh, wait. Yeah, approval of minutes November 2nd, 2023. So I'll ask for any edits to the minutes of September 7th. Or I guess it's November 2nd, 2023 that we're discussing, I believe.
Yes, November 2nd.
Yeah. Thank you. If there are no comments on the minutes, I would take a motion to approve the minutes.
It's Ted. So moved.
Moved by Ted. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ryan. Any further discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of adopting the minutes as presented?
Aye.
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 Thank you. All those opposed? We're doing great, guys. I'm whipping through these things. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's the approval of the minutes. Third is approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Madam Legislative Assistant, are there any changes to today's agenda?
No additions or deletions have been received by the clerk's office chair.
Thank you very much. Committee members, are there any changes you'd like to see to today's agenda?
None.
Being none, I'd invite a committee member to propose the following motion that the agenda be approved as presented. I'm now looking at Dominique, Maria, and anybody else want to get on the list?
I'll move.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion of the motion to adopt the order of business? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposition? All right, seeing none, we now have an agenda. That's great. Business arising out of the minutes, none. And now I will ask if anyone has a conflict of interest to declare as a result of an item on today's agenda. And in the Municipal Government Act, the conflict of interest is very specifically if you have like a financial interest. All right, seeing none, we'll move on. No deferred business. Correspondences, so on Section 7 correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Madam Clerk, is there any correspondence received?
No correspondence has been received by the clerk's office.
Thank you very much. How about petitions?
No petitions have been received for this meeting from the clerk's office.
Thank you very much. And do any members of the committee have any petitions to present?
I don't have any.
Very rare. Okay, thank you very much. And there are no presentations today. Boards, that item 8, item 9, reports and discussions. We're now into staff, and I'll ask Ian to come forward. As Ian Kennedy is the supervisor for Major Parks West, and I'd like you to give us an update on the operation memo that was circulated to members.
Hi, everyone. How are you? I guess we haven't met since November 2nd, but not too much to update in terms of operation since then. This time of year, we, with the snow, things generally slow down quite a bit. Much of the time in the before Christmas holidays was spent on basically prepping the park for winter and winter maintenance. So as you may have noticed, some of the trails are closed off, which are the ones we don't service in the winter. We also removed some amenities like garbage cans and the porta potties have been removed for the winter. Our focus is in the winter outside of snow removal, which is unpredictable. Although snow events can last a day, for us, we're kind of working before the event, during the event, and after. With it being a park on the ocean, keeping the trails from being icy is a bit tricky, but we try our best. So a lot of focus has been on the roads over the last, before Christmas and after Christmas, basically to avoid standing water, so that we don't have to deal with ice in the early mornings and late evenings. One thing that is of benefit to our winter maintenance is we just, it's been a long time coming, but we just received a new plow unit for our operation, which is great because we were currently operating for the last 2 years with only 2 plow units. So now we have 3, which only makes our ability to open the park earlier after storm events that much easier. We've been doing a lot of tree monitoring and removal as well over the last few months. I mentioned in the last report, we're still looking into it, and as I mentioned on this report, something's going on with a lot of the pine trees in Point Pleasant. We're finding a lot of snags that we're having to remove. During the last storm, we had quite a few come down, and this week we've taken some down as well. And we're working with Urban Forestry to kind of figure out, I've been talking with them to see if they've seen the same stuff going on in other parks, and they haven't. So we're not sure if it's the location, the age of the trees, or the weather they've been receiving over the last 30 years. But yeah, a lot of focus has been on removing those so we don't see them come down during the winter. We did see a bit of, I'm not going to say damage, but loss to the shoreline in the heavy storm we had in December. You may or may not have noticed, which is unfortunate. It's taken a while to commence pushing back the shoreline into the ocean, as we haven't seen any real frost or freeze of the ground until this week. So we've commenced doing that this week, which is good. Hoping we don't see much more degradation over the winter, but that is hard to predict. Otherwise, that's our main focus in the winter, is roads and tree work, because that's when we see the most storm. One thing I didn't mention in the update that I meant to, we talked about in a lot of the meetings last year about parks compliance. There hasn't officially been designated or posted a job position for an official parks compliance officer, but Teresa Hickey, who works for compliance, has, if you're a regular in the park, you've probably seen her, but she's been active in the park at least 2 days a week for the last, I'd say, 3 to 4 months, focusing on any encampments that show up, and bylaw enforcement for on-leash, off-leash areas, which is great. It's an extra set of eyes, and I don't want to use, yeah, it's an extra set of eyes and focus on the park that she can keep me updated on, and it's going great. She's seeing success. She's seeing less infractions of the dog bylaws, which is great, because it's a common and constant point of frustration and contention, both as a member of the public and staff. But glad to see that. I'm hoping that the positions for parks compliance officers end up coming to fruition, which I hope to see in 2024. Otherwise, plans for the rest of the year, we're seeing a lot of damage, both due to age, but also due to vehicular impact to the stone walls around the park. So we're looking at getting Coastal on coming in and doing, I chose the word targeted maintenance. As we mentioned before, a full overhaul of the stone walls is quite costly. So for the time being, we'll have to look at targeting specific areas of concern. The forestry thinning project has been approved for next year. That was deferred for the last 2 years due to budgetary reasons. So that'll finally be complete as of fall 2024. And that'll be kind of taking place in the southwest area of the park, kind of near Cambridge Battery, and towards that end of the shoreline near Purcell's Landing and such. One thing that's come up in a lot of meetings over the last year too was people driving or entering the park off Yonge Avenue straight through. So what we've done is we've installed sign infrastructure right at that entrance rather than into the park, so it can be seen both from the Yonge Street entrance and from the depot entrance, advertising no motor vehicle traffic. And surprisingly, it's working. Staff has noticed that they've seen less of that in the last 2 months, which is great. We've also installed speed limit signs in the lower parking lot to go along with the speed bumps that are finally installed. But other than that, we're still looking at working with Capital on getting an overhaul on the roads, as we're having trouble as staff within our means and equipment to keep up to maintaining their integrity. They'll need a full like scryation and overhaul, which is quite a big project and takes some time and will involve a lot, many hands. And we got a culvert installed on Sailors Memorial Way last year that was seeing some problems, but it's in the last few storms, it's seemingly worked its kinks out. But we're going to still install additional ones along Sailors Memorial Way, as the bottom of Prince of Wales is starting to see more and more flood off, and we don't want to see that road effectively wash and create large washouts into the ocean. Other than that, from a staffing perspective, we currently had a staff member exit, so we're about a week or two ago, so we're down to from 5 full-time staff to 4. So the operation is a little, but majority of the staff on the team have been in the operation for at least a decade or more, so they understand that sometimes we are a little stretched and have to, I guess, pull a little harder to meet the demands of the park. Otherwise, that's all I have to update, and I open the floor to anyone who has any comments or questions.
All right, I'll go through the list and ask each of you if you have any questions. We'll start with Ed Doan.
Thank you for the update, Ian. Very informative. Park's looking great. Just curious, you were talking about maintenance work to the roads. You're talking about the roads inside the park. Could you go into a bit more detail on that?
Yeah, so mostly the roads and the trails. None of the paved roads around the park. All the trails. Basically, those roads haven't had, I guess, an overhaul of their subsurface in quite some time. So what we're seeing is they're degrading down to the subsurface. So the roads aren't going anywhere. It's just it's harder on equipment to plow when the subsurface is exposed. It's harder to keep water from pooling when the subsurface is exposed. And when the subsurface is exposed, it's harder to keep material on the road to create the right shape of the road for it to be graded properly for proper runoff. So basically whereas like 7 or 8 years ago, adding material and working on sections of the park made the roads feasibly last longer. Now we're seeing almost every day staff is working on certain parts of the roads, but seeing it wash out and basically degrade at a quicker rate. So what needs to happen, especially on Cambridge, Shore Road, or off Cable, and Sailors Memorial, is almost a heavy equipment to come in and re-subsurface it and then add material and regrade that, which is quite a feat because it requires heavy equipment and expensive equipment that is not within HRM's, I guess, equipment inventory. It would be something that would be done by a contractor, whether coastal or the like. But it's not to say that the roads are going to cave in or wash away. It's just it makes for a lot of monotony for staff, and something that we constantly have to think about the roads, but it seems to be the only thing we're thinking about over the last year and a half or two, and especially with the heavy rainfall we're seeing. Yeah, it's hard to keep on top of it, but and we're also stretched because we do manage 2 other parks or 3 or 4 other parks and have other duties. So to move staff and have them spend time upwards of a week or 2 on a single stretch of road is hard to schedule and manage and stay on top of other priorities.
I'm glad to hear that's planned. And as well, to hear about the work on the walls, the stone walls is good as well, because some preventative maintenance will keep them from degrading further. So that sounds great.
Yeah. And we're seeing a lot where we'll come in the morning and we can only assume it's from vehicles because you can see paint and pieces of vehicles, but areas of the wall where we will show up in the morning and it looks as if someone is backed up into it, or but it is expensive, as we mentioned before, but for the time being, we'll just have to focus on the localized areas.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Ian. We'll go to Ryan next.
I was just wondering if this maintenance being done on the roads, is this something we would expect for the age of the roads, or is it something that's been exacerbated by the extreme weather we've had over the last little while?
I would say both. From a staff perspective, coming into this position 2 years ago, I had previously worked at the park, but then left to another department for 3 or 4 years. But talking to staff as well that work there now that have been there for almost a decade, and staff members that there's regular retirees that visit the park, and they've spoken to and said basically the last time the roads received, I guess, a full overhaul was quite some time ago. And it's basically the weather and what we're seeing as an operation.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lost my cursor there for a second. Okay, so Muyu, do you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen, do you have any questions?
Sorry, no, I don't.
Okay. Dominique, do you have any questions?
No.
Thank you all. Ian, I want to say just for the record that until you told me that there's one officer in Point Pleasant Park 2 days a week, I did not connect the dots that no one has called me about dogs in months. So that's really good. Yeah, there's a direct, to me, it would be interesting to go back through the emails and stuff and kind of see when it dropped off. I suspect there's a direct correlation between those 2 things. So that's very happy to hear it. And when we talk about a road recap, I can't think of when that's been done, even in my lifetime. Certainly since I moved back to health, it's in 1990. I think I would be unsurprised if it was the 50s or 60s, or earlier. I think it's a long time. It's been thrown out.
I talked to an ex employee. He retired 12 years ago, and he said, something over 30 years ago, I think, or more. He said they came in and did a couple of the main roads, and with a large scale steamroller and everything, and that was when he was in his 20s. and so it was probably in the 70s or the 80s. So it's been a long time.
Yeah, so this isn't going to be like a straight up just running a grader down it kind of thing, like you might do in a gravel road in the country. Like you're thinking about it.
Yeah, like it. I'm working with a contract supervisor right now because it's that from a budgetary standpoint, it's like it's kind of, I don't want to say out of my hands. It has to be proposed to capital for just the how big of a feat it will be, and likely when it happens, it'll require like road closure, not for an extended period of time, but yeah, like it'll be large scale machinery in there that'll be tearing it up and resurfacing it.
So this leads to, so I have three more quick zingers. This isn't exactly in your space, but the shoreline mitigation study and the archaeological report that's part of it. We have a timeline that's going to come back to the committee, because I frankly expect them to suggest that we should probably move Taylor Memorial. So I'm kind of happy to hear it needs a big bunch of money. That's a big bunch.
Yeah.
But I think there's a couple of places where this flood gets covered with drone rock, and I think if you're making it future proof, we're going to spend the money, you should do it. So do we know when that's coming back?
The shoreline project?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a timeline. I know they're still working on it, and I will say after any of the hurricanes or post-tropical storms or cyclones or however they choose to describe them when they hit, the person from environment that is Krista Hogan, I think she spoke on the committee before. She always asks for an update and images of the shoreline, and I hear from her, but in terms of timeline, I still don't have one. I do know with this proposal of the road restructure, from Parks End, we're focusing on Arm and Cambridge, because I do know, like you said, Sailors Memorial will be restructured in that shoreline remediation, because they do plan to move it farther back. So, but as far as the timeline.
So I guess with to the clerk's I'd say we may want to get an update from I think it's either Nalini, Naidu, or Jeff Spare's group, who would be able to tell us where that's at, because it was a 1-year process and we're kind of coming up to that timeline, so that might be a good item for this meeting.
Yeah.
And my last two questions for you are tree thinning program that continuing this summer, and give you the last one too. It's COVID being not really over managed. It might be time to bring back the shilling ceremony, which is a fun thing to do, and good news for you, Ian, is that the civic events people said that they'd run it for us, so we may want to connect civic events about, are we going to do that? Because it takes a long time.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I guess I could reach out to Billy Comer about that and see if that's something they've thought of re-implementing and go from there. Yeah. Because I know staff was asking about it.
Well, I mean, what happened is the volunteer committee and staff were doing it, and that's silly, right? Like, Billy can do it in his sleep. Tree thinning, is that happening in the summer?
Yeah, so that with the last two phases of it, that they did kind of in the northeastern part of the park and then kind of the southeastern part of the park, that was taken on by a contractor. So they will be doing that again. They usually do it around October, November. There's less foliage, so it's easier to get through the woods, but it's also outside of migratory bird season. So it is slated and it is approved in the budget to be done. And I had maps made up to prep for, so it basically has to go to tender, and then a contractor has to put in a bid, and it's ready to go, because the pre-planning was all done, but it was it didn't happen. So it's basically set to go to tender and will happen this fall.
Great. Thanks for all those answers. Does anybody have any other questions before we move on? Going once, going twice. Well, thanks everyone. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda.
Thank you.
Which I think is being done. Thanks, Ian. Thank you very much. So committee member updates, there are none. Added items, there are none. The date of our next meeting is March 7th, 2024, which brings us to the last item, which is adjournment. So I need a mover only for an adjournment. That's a little inside baseball on rules of order. Doesn't need a seconder. So do I have a mover that we adjourn? I think Dominique, are you giving me the thumbs up for that? Thumbs up. Dominique Johns has moved that we are adjourned. We are adjourned. Thank you all so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.